Do you fly?
Oh, yes. Darren's a fast worker. I ought to know.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Did you ever realize just how weirdly magical Bewitched really was? In the 1960s, this show wasn't just TV, it was a nightly spell where suburban life mixed with broomsticks, laughter, and quiet rebellion. But behind that sparkle, how many strange truths were hiding in plain sight? 2 Darrens, 1 Bewitched. Dick York played the first Darren, and for the first 5 seasons, he embodied the anxious, lovable husband who somehow managed to stay married to a witch. But few viewers knew the toll it took on him behind the scenes. York had suffered a severe back injury years before while filming a movie, and the pain never left him. By the late 1960s, the long hours on set and constant physical strain became unbearable. During one episode, he collapsed on set and was rushed to the hospital. The show went on hiatus, and after his health worsened, he was quietly replaced by Dick Sargent. There was no in-story explanation, no magical transformation, no wink to the audience, just a new Darren in Samantha's kitchen the following week. Some fans were confused, others amused, but most simply accepted it. Television was different back then. No social media, no tabloids breaking the news in real time. The producers believed the audience would adapt, and surprisingly, they did. Even though Sargent brought a gentler, more laid-back energy to the role, York's frantic energy remained the version many remembered. Elizabeth Montgomery herself later said she adored both men, though she quietly admitted that York's chemistry with her had a rare spark that could never quite be duplicated. The 2 Darrens became television legend, a trivia question for the ages, and one of the strangest casting swaps ever pulled off without explanation. Samantha's nose twitch wasn't real magic. The most iconic gesture on Bewitched was Samantha's quick little nose twitch, a blink-and-you-miss-it move that looked like pure witchcraft. But the truth is, Elizabeth Montgomery was not wiggling her nose at all. What she actually did was move her upper lip in a very subtle way that made her nose appear to twitch. The clever part came in editing. When the editors cut away and added a magical sound effect, it became instant magic. Viewers swore they saw her nose move on its own. In reality, it was all camera tricks, tight shots, and perfect timing. Montgomery herself laughed about it later, saying she was shocked by how obsessed fans became with her witchy twitch. People wrote in asking for tips on how to do it, and she would jokingly say, "If I told you, it would stop being magic." The twitch became so famous that even cartoons like The Simpsons and Family Guy have parodied it. It was a symbol of the show's entire charm, simple, clever, and a little mischievous. What made it even better was how natural it looked, as if Samantha were born to do it. In a world of over-the-top special effects, it proved that sometimes a small, perfectly timed movement can be more enchanting than 1,000 sparks or spells. Endora and Darren never made eye contact. Fans loved watching Endora torment Darren, but their on-screen tension was not just acting, it was strategy. Agnes Moorehead, who played the fiery red-haired witch, and Dick York made a conscious decision to never look each other in the eyes during their scenes together. They believed it made their dislike feel more authentic, and they were right. Every glare, smirk, and sarcastic jab carried more bite because of it. The avoidance turned into a running bit that became part of their chemistry. Off camera, however, the two got along well. Moorehead respected York's professionalism, even though she sometimes found the show's domestic storyline too ordinary for her theatrical taste. When Dick Sargent took over the role of Darren, she maintained the same habit, never full eye contact, only icy sidelong glances. It kept Endora's superiority intact and gave Darren the constant sense that he was being judged by a mother-in-law from another dimension. Viewers never questioned it. They just knew those two could not stand each other. Ironically, Moorehead later said that the lack of eye contact made the scenes sparkle with tension. It is one of those small behind-the-scenes choices that quietly changed television acting, proof that sometimes what you do not do on camera can say more than what you do. A real pregnancy was written into the show. When Elizabeth Montgomery became pregnant during filming, the writers had a choice: hide it or embrace it. They chose the latter. Instead of disguising her with props or camera angles, they turned her pregnancy into one of the show's most famous storylines: the arrival of baby Tabitha. This was a bold move for the time. In the 1960s television, showing pregnancy was often considered taboo. But Bewitched had always been about bending the rules, and this time it blended real life with fantasy. As Montgomery's belly grew, so did the excitement of the audience. People felt like they were part of the family. The birth of Tabitha, Samantha's magical daughter, became a cultural moment, one that reflected both a real woman's life and a fictional witch's destiny. The cast adored the storyline, and the writers had fun dreaming up what powers the baby would inherit. It made the show feel strangely real, even as it floated in a world of spells and broomsticks. Montgomery later said it was one of her favorite creative decisions. By letting life and fiction intertwine, the show captured something timeless, a reminder that magic, like family, sometimes begins in the most ordinary places. Elizabeth Montgomery hated the laugh track. To most viewers, the laugh track on Bewitched was harmless background noise, a cue to smile at the right moments. But Elizabeth Montgomery despised it. She thought it insulted the intelligence of the audience and cheapened the show's warmth. To her, Bewitched was not a slapstick comedy. It was a gentle, whimsical story about love, identity, and belonging. The fake laughter felt out of place. She repeatedly asked producers to remove it, but they refused. At the time, television networks believed audiences needed to be told when to laugh or they might think something was wrong. Montgomery would roll her eyes during screenings when the recorded laughter drowned out her delivery. She once joked that the laugh track was the loudest cast member on the show. Her instincts were right. When the show was rerun overseas without the laugh track, fans praised how much more charming and natural it felt. You could actually hear the pauses, the tone shifts, the chemistry between characters. It is funny how something so small could change the mood of an entire show. For Montgomery, it was proof that Bewitched never needed a laugh track. It already had heart. The show was a feminist symbol in disguise. On the surface, Bewitched looked like another 1960s sitcom about a housewife and her husband. But look closer, and you see something revolutionary. Samantha Stevens was not just a wife. She was a woman with incredible power, constantly asked to suppress it to fit into suburban normalcy. Every episode mirrored the real struggles many women faced at the time. Should they hide their ambitions, talents, or individuality to make others comfortable? Samantha's promise to Darren to stop using magic was a metaphor for this exact dilemma. Elizabeth Montgomery and the writers never stated this openly, but the subtext was clear. Samantha's defiance, her little rebellions, her moments of independence became quiet acts of empowerment. While other shows of the era told women to know their place, Bewitched showed one refusing to. Even Endora, the fiery mother-in-law, stood as a symbol of unapologetic female confidence. The series aired during the early wave of the women's liberation movement, and many viewers, especially women, saw themselves in Samantha's quiet frustration and her charm. Beneath its laughter and sparkles, Bewitched was a story about the power you are told not to use, and what happens when you decide to use it anyway. Elizabeth Montgomery voiced Serena herself. When Samantha's mischievous cousin Serena appeared on screen, fans assumed it was another actress entirely. But the truth is, it was Elizabeth Montgomery playing both roles, switching seamlessly between sweet suburban witch and her wild, free-spirited alter ego. To keep the mystery alive, the show credited Serena as Pandora Spox, a playful pseudonym that fooled many viewers for years. Montgomery had a blast with the role. It gave her a chance to show a different side of herself, one that was edgier, flirtier, and full of bite. In some ways, Serena was Samantha without restraint, the part of her that refused to conform. The crew loved filming Serena's episodes because Montgomery's energy doubled. She went from wholesome to rebellious in the span of minutes. It took precise camera work, body doubles, and clever editing to pull off the illusion. Fans later said they could always tell it was her, but they did not mind. It only made them appreciate her more. Playing two women who were so different yet deeply connected became one of her proudest achievements. It was like watching the good and mischievous sides of magic coexist and realizing they were both part of the same enchanting woman. The theme song had lyrics, but they were never used. Everyone knows the Bewitched theme, that playful, jazzy tune that instantly brings the show to mind. But few people realize that it originally had full lyrics. Howard Greenfield wrote words to accompany Jack Keller's catchy melody, and they were intended for the opening credits. The lyrics described Samantha's charm and how she cast a spell on Darren's heart. However, when producers heard the sung version, they decided it felt too literal. They wanted mystery, not explanation. The wordless, whimsical version we know today left more to the imagination and made the animation stand out beautifully. It was a brilliant choice. The melody became one of the most recognizable in television history. In later years, fans discovered the unused lyrics, and a few artists even recorded them as tributes. Listening to it feels strange, almost like hearing a secret version of your favorite memory. It is catchy, but somehow less magical without the simplicity of the original. The decision to drop the vocals was one of those rare creative moments where restraint created perfection. Sometimes the most memorable spells are the ones left unspoken. Dr. Bombay's catchphrase was improvised. Bernard Fox played the eccentric witch doctor, Dr. Bombay, and his booming voice became one of the show's most delightful surprises. Every time he appeared, chaos followed, but so did laughter. His signature line, "Calling Dr. Bombay," "Emergency," "Come right away," was not in the script. Fox made it up on the spot during a take, trying to make the crew laugh. It stuck instantly. The writers loved it so much they worked it into future episodes, turning it into his official introduction. The character's personality, a mix of charm, arrogance, and scatterbrained brilliance, was largely Fox's creation. He modeled him after old British military doctors and professors he had met growing up. Each time he arrived, he wore an increasingly ridiculous outfit, from safari gear to beach shorts, as if he had been teleported mid-vacation. It added to his charm and unpredictability. Fans adored him, and his catchphrase became part of pop culture. Even decades later, people quote it whenever something goes wrong in a funny way. That one improvised moment proved something timeless about comedy, that spontaneity often outshines perfection. Bewitched was the first show to feature a divorced witch. In an early version of the pilot script, Samantha was written not as a newlywed, but as a divorced witch trying to live among mortals. It was a daring idea for 1964 television, when even the word divorce made networks nervous. The concept was meant to highlight her independence, a woman choosing her own path after leaving an unhappy relationship in the witch world. But the studio executives thought it was far too scandalous. They wanted wholesome family appeal, not controversy. So they reworked the script, making Samantha a young bride instead. The original idea was buried, but it left traces. Samantha's confidence, her maturity, and her quiet resistance to Darren's rules all hinted at the woman she was originally written to be. It is fascinating to imagine what Bewitched might have looked like if they had kept that version. A bold story about a woman rebuilding her life with humor, grace, and a little magic. Even though the divorce angle never aired, the spirit of that idea remained. Samantha Stevens may have been married on paper, but in spirit, she was always her own woman. Dick York collapsed on set. During the filming of Season 5, Dick York's body finally gave out. Years earlier, a terrible accident on a film set had left him with permanent spinal damage, and the grueling production schedule of Bewitched only made it worse. Every movement, every comedic stumble came at a physical cost. On one February afternoon, while filming a simple scene, York suddenly went pale, began to shake, and collapsed into the arms of a crew member. The set fell silent as he was carried away and rushed to the hospital. The doctors told him he had to stop immediately or risk paralysis. With no dramatic farewell or closing arc, York quietly left the show he had given his heart to. Elizabeth Montgomery sent him a handwritten letter afterward, saying she would miss his energy and kindness. Though the producers replaced him with Dick Sargent, fans noticed the change immediately. Yet few realized that York's exit was not about ego or conflict. It was about pain. He later said in interviews that he loved the role but could no longer fake being fine. It remains one of the most heartbreaking departures in classic television history. A man who made millions laugh while silently enduring agony behind every smile. Agnes Moorehead was a devout Christian. It might surprise fans that the woman who played television's most fabulous witch was deeply religious in real life. Agnes Moorehead was known for her fiery presence on screen, but off-camera, she carried a Bible in her purse and often quoted scripture between takes. She saw Bewitched as a story about love and morality, not witchcraft. Whenever someone on set joked about real spells, she would quickly remind them that it was all make-believe. Despite her stern image, she was gentle with the cast, particularly with the younger actors, often taking time to talk about values and faith. Her religious devotion gave Endora's authority an unexpected depth, because she approached every role as a moral study of human nature. She reportedly once told Elizabeth Montgomery that she believed Endora represented the pride of the world and the temptation of power, and that Samantha's compassion was what redeemed her. That thoughtful approach elevated what could have been a cartoonish character into something iconic. To this day, Moorehead's performance proves that even the most magical characters can be grounded in humanity, discipline, and a surprising amount of faith. Endora's eye, makeup took hours. Agnes Moorehead's Endora was unforgettable. Her flaming red hair, glittering gowns, and hypnotic eyes practically defined Bewitched's visual identity. But those eyes came at a price. Every day, she sat in the makeup chair for more than 2 hours while artists layered shimmering green and purple shadows, painted her long lashes, and blended vivid eyeliner that made her look half glamour, half sorcery. Moorehead was patient but particular. She wanted Endora's face to be a weapon and a warning, something that said, "I am not from your world." Once the cameras rolled, it paid off. The makeup shimmered under studio lights like stardust. The look became so popular that fashion magazines of the time ran tutorials called Bewitched Eyes. Behind the scenes, however, the heat from the lights would cause the heavy layers of makeup to melt, forcing constant touch-ups. By the end of the day, Moorehead's skin was often raw and tired, but she never complained. She believed Endora should always appear larger than life, untouchable, and perfect. Her dedication turned a daily routine into an art form, proving that magic sometimes begins with patience, powder, and a very steady hand. The Kravitzes were based on real nosy neighbors. Every great sitcom has a nosy neighbor, and Bewitched had two of the best, Gladys and Abner Kravitz. Their constant spying, gossiping, and confusion over Samantha's unusual household made them fan favorites. What most viewers did not know was that they were inspired by real people. Elizabeth Montgomery once revealed in an interview that the Kravitzes were modeled after the prying neighbors who lived next door to her childhood home in Los Angeles. They would peer over fences, call her father about noise, and even report imagined mischief to the police. The show's writers loved the story and decided to immortalize them as the Kravitzes, a couple both endearing and exasperating. Alice Pierce, who played Gladys, brought a nervous energy to the role that made her instantly lovable. When Pierce passed away, her replacement, Sandra Gould, continued the spirit perfectly. Their scenes reminded audiences of the small-town gossip and suspicion that lurked in every suburb. Ironically, those real-life busybodies would never know they became television icons. Maybe that is poetic justice. After all, they finally got to see everything they were never meant to. The magic sound effects were done with harps and bells. Before digital audio existed, television studios had to make every sound by hand, and Bewitched was no exception. The signature sparkle of Samantha's magic was not produced by computers or synthesizers, but by a small orchestra of creativity. Sound designers used a combination of tiny silver bells, xylophones, and even reversed harp glissandos to mimic the shimmer of a spell being cast. They would record the harp being played backward and then flip the tape, creating that instantly recognizable whoosh. Sometimes they used glasses filled with water, gently tapping them with metal rods to add more sparkle. The process took hours, but the result was worth it. Each magical ding or pop carried a warmth that modern sound libraries rarely replicate. The sound effects team became so skilled that other shows began borrowing their methods. Even decades later, those chimes remain the sound of childhood wonder for millions. They remind us of a time when magic was handcrafted, one note at a time, with nothing more than imagination, patience, and a few well-timed bell rings. Elizabeth Montgomery's father disapproved of the show. Elizabeth Montgomery's father, Robert Montgomery, was a respected film actor and director who had big plans for his daughter's career. When Bewitched premiered, he was not thrilled. To him, it was a silly show, too whimsical, too unserious for someone with her dramatic training. He wanted her on the stage, performing Shakespeare or serious dramas, not twitching her nose in a suburban kitchen. But Elizabeth saw something in Bewitched that he did not. She knew it was clever, subversive, and full of heart. The tension between father and daughter became a quiet undercurrent throughout her career. While Robert rarely spoke publicly about the show, his disapproval weighed on her for years. Yet, in a twist of fate, the qualities he criticized, her warmth, timing, and lightness, made her unforgettable. Bewitched became a global hit, and Elizabeth Montgomery became a symbol of television's golden age. By the end, her performance outshone his legacy in the hearts of audiences everywhere. She once said that playing Samantha taught her how to laugh at life, a lesson she likely wished her father had understood sooner. Real-life spouses played magical rivals. Behind the camera, Bewitched was a family affair. Elizabeth Montgomery was married to William Asher, the show's producer and frequent director. Their marriage brought both magic and mayhem to the set. Asher was a talented storyteller who often wrote episodes exploring the tension between Samantha's independence and Darren's stubbornness, an uncanny reflection of his and Elizabeth's own dynamic. Their creative partnership worked brilliantly on screen but grew complicated in private. Friends recalled moments when their personal arguments would echo in the script. Despite that, they shared deep respect for each other's talent. Asher admired her intuition as an actress, while she credited him with shaping the show's heart and humor. When their marriage eventually ended, they continued working together professionally, committed to finishing the series strong. It is ironic that a show about balancing love and power became the story of their own lives. In some ways, Bewitched was their shared spell, beautiful, imperfect, and unforgettable. Samantha's costume jewelry came from thrift stores. Samantha Stevens looked effortlessly glamorous, but her dazzling jewelry was not the product of Hollywood luxury. The show's costume department worked with a strict budget and often had to get creative. Instead of fine gemstones, Samantha's iconic brooches and sparkling necklaces were picked up from secondhand shops and bargain bins around Los Angeles. Costume designer Gwen Wakeling had an eye for turning inexpensive finds into elegant screen treasures. Under the bright studio lights, rhinestones and imitation pearls looked every bit as expensive as diamonds. Elizabeth Montgomery loved the thrifty approach. She said it made Samantha feel like a real woman who enjoyed small luxuries without excess. Some of the jewelry pieces became so recognizable that fans later hunted for replicas in antique stores. It is almost poetic that the symbols of suburban magic came from humble places, reminding us that beauty does not have to be costly to shine. Every glint and sparkle on Samantha's wrist carried a quiet truth. Even a witch knows how to make the most of what she has. Uncle Arthur wasn't supposed to recur. When Paul Lynde first appeared as Uncle Arthur, the writers thought it would be a one-time gag, a funny guest star to stir things up. But Lynde's biting humor, playful sarcasm, and twinkling mischief stole every scene he was in. The audience response was instant and overwhelming. Letters poured in asking for more of the hilarious warlock with the wicked sense of humor. So, the writers brought him back again and again, making him a recurring part of the Stevens magical family. Off-screen, Linda's quick wit made him a joy for the cast, though he was famously unpredictable. His sly jokes about human absurdity gave the show a sharp edge that balanced its sweetness. In a way, Uncle Arthur represented the side of Bewitched that refused to take itself too seriously, a reminder that even in a world of spells and broomsticks, laughter is the best kind of magic. His presence became a cornerstone of the show's humor, proving that sometimes the most unforgettable characters start as happy accidents. Bewitched shared a set with I Dream of Jeannie. Fans with sharp eyes may have noticed something familiar about Samantha's house. It looked suspiciously like another famous home on television. That is because Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie shared the same suburban neighborhood set on the Columbia Pictures backlot. The two shows were filmed just years apart, and rather than build new homes, the studio simply redecorated and rearranged the landscaping. Samantha's front porch, Darren's driveway, and even the Kravitz's house were all recycled pieces of Hollywood suburbia. When I Dream of Jeannie began, the crew swapped shutters, painted fences, and added a few palm trees, creating a new neighborhood. The result was so convincing that few people ever noticed. The shared set became a symbol of 1960s television's thrifty ingenuity, proof that imagination mattered more than budgets. It is a delightful coincidence that both shows, centered on magical women in love with mortal men, ended up living side by side in the same make-believe world. Maybe that is fitting. After all, a little Hollywood magic can make even two witches and a genie next-door neighbors. The show was nearly canceled. After season 1, when Bewitched first premiered in 1964, network executives were nervous. The idea of a witch marrying a mortal man sounded risky, even strange, for family television. A BC worried that audiences might see it as too supernatural or even controversial. But the opposite happened. Viewers were instantly charmed by Samantha's warmth, Darren's exasperation, and the gentle humor that came from trying to blend magic with suburbia. Still, the executives hesitated to renew the show until the final ratings arrived. To their surprise, Bewitched became one of the top 10 shows on television, drawing millions of loyal viewers every week. Its mix of domestic comedy and fantasy was exactly what America needed, a little escape from everyday life wrapped in laughter and love. Once ABC realized the magic they had, the decision to renew was instant. What almost became a one-season experiment turned into 8 years of television history. It is funny to think that one of the most beloved shows of all time nearly vanished before it ever had a chance to cast its first real spell. The first episode aired just before the Beatles hit America. Timing is everything in entertainment, and Bewitched arrived at a cultural crossroads. Its premiere aired only months before the Beatles landed in America, bringing with them a tidal wave of youth, rebellion, and change. While Beatlemania reshaped music, Bewitched quietly did the same for television. It introduced a different kind of heroine, one who was smart, independent, and capable of bending the rules. The 1960s were becoming a decade of transformation, and Samantha Stevens fit right in. She was as modern and spirited as the music revolution happening across the Atlantic. Elizabeth Montgomery's charm and style mirrored the freshness that young audiences were craving. Together, the Beatles and Bewitched captured something rare, the feeling that the world was about to get more exciting, more unpredictable, and a lot more magical. It is poetic that both the mop-topped musicians and the suburban witch debuted within months of each other, each in their own way changing pop culture forever. Bewitched helped desegregate TV. In the early 1960s, American television rarely showed people of color in everyday suburban life. It was a reflection of the times and a quiet reminder of how limited representation truly was. But Bewitched made a small yet meaningful step forward. Elizabeth Montgomery personally pushed for diversity on set, insisting that Black actors appear as extras in neighborhood and crowd scenes. It might seem minor today, but back then it was a quiet act of defiance against unwritten industry rules. For many viewers, it was the first time they saw a Black character simply existing in the same world, shopping, walking, laughing, without it being a statement. Montgomery later said she wanted Bewitched to show the real America, not a filtered one. That decision helped normalize integration on television, paving the way for shows that followed. Sometimes progress begins not with a speech, but with a simple presence, a reminder that everyone belongs, even in a world filled with witches and magic. The final episode aired without a goodbye. After 8 enchanting seasons, Bewitched quietly disappeared from the airwaves in 1972. There was no farewell, no emotional send-off, not even a hint that the end had come. The final episode aired like any other. Samantha solved a small problem, Darren grumbled, and life in the Stevens home went on. Behind the scenes, ratings had dipped and tensions had risen, leading ABC to quietly end production. Fans tuning in the next week expected another new adventure, but it never came. The show simply stopped, frozen in its own spell, unfinished. Elizabeth Montgomery later said she wished they had filmed a true ending, something that gave closure to the characters she loved. Instead, Bewitched faded away the same way its magic always appeared, suddenly and without explanation. Maybe that was fitting. After all, magic is mysterious, and some stories are meant to end mid-spell, leaving us forever wondering what might have happened next. A real pregnancy was written into the show. When Elizabeth Montgomery became pregnant during the second season, the writers decided to embrace reality instead of hiding it. It became one of television's first examples of blending real life into fiction. Her growing belly turned into the story of baby Tabitha's magical arrival, a moment that captured the hearts of millions. The show handled it with humor and tenderness, treating motherhood not as a burden but as a beautiful extension of Samantha's world. Fans watched as Darren nervously prepared for fatherhood, while Endora smirked from the sidelines, predicting chaos. Behind the scenes, Montgomery was genuinely glowing, and that authenticity shone through every episode. When Tabitha finally appeared, she became the perfect symbol of the show's heart, a mix of love, laughter, and inherited magic. What started as a practical production decision became one of Bewitched's most beloved storylines, reminding viewers that even witches have real lives, and sometimes the greatest magic of all is family. If these weird little secrets from Bewitched cast a spell on your nostalgia, tell us your favorite one down below. Tap that like button to keep the magic alive, and subscribe so you never miss another trip back to television's most enchanting past.